Friends, before we offer this again, I'd just like to affirm that the land on which we meet was first cared for by the Jarawar and Ngabal people. We ask blessing and give thanks for their elders past, present and emerging. And for those unfamiliar with what we're about to do, these words we use before we meet each month. We have a time of silence of about 3 breaths, and then I'll begin by saying together we come, and then we say together some words which affirm why we're here, and then when we finish we close with 3 breaths. If as you read the words you feel comfortable to join us in offering these words, please do so. So let's pause, breathe deeply and focus our minds. Together we come from different parts of the world with rich experience in our uniqueness from many faiths. We are diverse and yet we stand united. Our purpose is collective, our goals are common, our intention is harmony, and for this we give thanks. Together we pray for the well-being of creation, for greater unity between people, for guidance and blessing, and that goodness and peace may come. May goodness and peace come from all that we share today. Thank you.
Thank you all for that again. That was a very touching prayer. Now, world peace is something that I wholeheartedly believe that every person in this room aspires for and strives for in day-to-day life. It is truly a dream we must all play our part in promoting to our brothers and sisters across the world, and in a way we can begin exercising compassion every day. Now, in saying that, I'd like to welcome to the stage a truly compassionate man and a cherished member of the Toowoomba community. He is the CEO for Toowoomba Lifeline, Darling Downs and Southwest Queensland Limited. He's been the CEO for almost 20 years and has been with Lifeline for more than 32 years in Toowoomba. He is the chairman of Responsible Gambling Advisory Committee in Queensland. He's the chairman of Southern Queensland Rural Health, and he is a member of the Valued Local Committee and has lived in Toowoomba for almost 40 years. And in saying that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Derek Tuffield to the stage.
Thank you very much, and for that very warm welcome. It is indeed my honour to be here today with you and to deliver the keynote address. May I firstly acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Jarawar and Ngabal people, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and thank them for the care and attention they've given to this beautiful land. Also wish to acknowledge the other elders that are in the room here today from the various cultures that join us for these wonderful 2 days. And I hope that you enjoy my presentation on compassion. So the theme is compassion as a common ground of religious faith and practice. In preparing for today's presentation, my mind went to many different places in relation to what does the word compassion mean in 2019. Does it mean different things for different people? Does compassion still exist in 2019 as part of our daily lives? Does compassion come naturally to individuals? Or is it a word of generations past and no longer a buzzword in the 21st century? if compassion still exists today, in what form is it seen? How is it applied? Is it still respected and valued as it was in years gone by? I believe that often compassion occurs in our daily lives without us even thinking about it. And we don't go, oh, I think I did a compassionate action there today. I think we do it as part of being human beings and living in the communities that we do, and I often don't think about it. It is important to remember that compassion can be life-changing for someone. It's often the small actions we do that have a profound impact on others and are received internally by them as an act of compassion and an understanding of what the person may be going through at that specific point of time. At Lifeline Darling Downs, we often speak about, as a not-for-profit, about giving people a hand up and not a hand out. People will often seek help with assistance from charities, churches, and not-for-profit organisations that offer free services to the wider community. When their lives are being impacted and their stress and anxiety levels are reaching breaking point, or have in fact reached breaking point. And you must admit that today in Australia and in our community, we are being impacted by severe natural disasters in many ways, and I'll talk a bit more about that as I go. But we've had bushfires, Stanthorpe, we've had bushfires up at Crow's Nest, we've had a drought that's been going for more than 7 years. It's a tough climate here in Australia at the moment, and so the need for compassion will be very much at the forefront. Having an individual, a close friend, or an organisation with staff or volunteers that are skilled at listening and then responding can for many people be reassuring and can help them feel heard, and sometimes understanding that someone else cares about what's happening for them in their life, again at that particular point of time. And this can be seen as an individual organisation showing compassion. So a lot of you will be aware that Lifeline runs a 13114 24/7 telephone counselling service. It's there for listening. It's there when people need to talk about what's going on in their lives. In the last 12 months, we answered 732,000 calls. We helped complete over 102 suicide safe plans for people per day over 365 days. 102 safety plans a day in Australia at the moment. So Lifeline can show compassion through the 1-3 service by being a good listener and allowing people to feel that they've been heard. Showing real concern and understanding for our fellow human beings can be reaffirming for them that they are important and acknowledging that they may be in pain mentally or physically, and this can be shown as an expression of compassion. So over the past 7 years, as I mentioned earlier, Australia's been in the grips of a prolonged, devastating drought, which it came to the nation's attention about 12 months ago when the drought finally reached Sydney. The nation's outcry and response was to raise millions of dollars to support our struggling farmers and their families and those who derive their income from the land. The natural disasters often seen in Australia come forth and see Australians dig deep financially. We dig deep physically. Some examples you have seen is trucking hay around to the farmers in the southwest, buying or carting water, particularly to Stanthorpe, at the moment and showing real concern and compassion for fellow Australians. So I want to take you back a little bit. I want to take you back to this community in 2011. When the floods occurred on the 10th of January, I remember taking a phone call from a mate of mine who I knew through sport here, and he was crying on the phone at that time, and he said to me, "Derek, I need to be doing something to help the residents and businesses affected today by the floodwaters. Please tell me what I can do to be of assistance." My friend's personal need and desire to do something to help his fellow Toowoomba community members was so strong. So my question to you is, was this him showing compassion at that point of time? And the answer is yes, it was. I could hear that his desire to help was so strong, I needed to respond. I needed to do something. I did, and I allocated him a task appropriately. Yet again, nationally, Australians responded to Toowoomba flood in 2011, and as being the CEO of Lifeline, I remember that we worked very closely with the Toowoomba Regional Council, as we did with many other agencies here in town. And in actual fact, we filled 5 different sized warehouses of donations of clothing, electrical items, goods from all parts of Australia to be distributed to flood affected families and individuals across 16 different flooded locations. It took us 2.5 years actually to process that. That's how strong the response was and the need for people to be able to assist our community. Yet there are also times when compassion, regulations, expectations, and entitlements become conflicted. The illegal arrival of immigrants in boats into Australian waters is one easy example where these conflicts often occur. The refugees who are fleeing their homeland for a better life in Australia are seeking compassion, are hoping that they will be welcomed and settled into Australia. But regulations apply about how refugees should enter Australia via approved processes. And so often the boat people are often returned to where they've come from or end up in detention centres for years, and in many cases in Australia, which in some cases, of course, cause serious mental health issues. There are regulations like border security that need to be observed. The expectations of boat people having shifted from The expectations of the boat people have shifted from one of compassion to one of unknown in relation to their future for them and their family members. There are calls for the federal government to show compassion, and at the same time for the federal government to enforce its own regulations and policies to keep Australia safe. The balance between showing compassion and protecting Australia's national security will remain a major challenge regardless whichever political Australian power, let me say that again. The balance between showing compassion and protecting Australia's national security will remain a major challenge regardless which Australian political party is in power. It just will be. However, on a lighter note, I'd like to say that a famous local Aboriginal elder, Uncle Darby McCarthy, once said to me when we were discussing boat people arriving into Australia, he said, "Well, Derek, how do you think your lot got here in 1770? Now, please put your hands together. I think that was a moment of a real brilliance in actual fact, because it was very true. And in actual fact, my ancestors were on that first boat. So what is the meaning of compassion? Showing compassion is to help or be merciful, to display kindness. And I was talking to my wife today before I came, This is quite a challenging topic. And I was talking to her about the word merciful and about it's not a word we hear too often. Our language in this country has shifted over the years. And I reminded her that one of my late mother's uncles was killed at Pozieres in 1917. And when you do ancestry DNA and you look through about the records, all of a sudden I found the records of where he was killed in action at Pozieres. And when they made reference to him, they referred to him as a man of good stature. And I said, well, that's also a bit of language we don't use in Australia. We don't talk of men of being of good stature today. Our language has shifted. We don't often use the word merciful, and I think we need to. The word merciful is not a word, as I said, that is often spoken today. It's a word that suggests reducing pain. In some cases, it may be for a much-loved sick pet or injured animal as well. By being merciful to the sick pet or injured animal, as sad as difficult as it may be, we are in fact showing compassion. That we didn't wish the pain to continue or the distress or to distress the animal any further. This is a difficult form of compassion for many because often that pet is their family. It is their loved one. And to have to do that when the pet is put down is both being merciful and compassionate, but very difficult. Since 1997, I'm going to change tack a bit here, Lifeline Darling Downs has been working with members of the rainbow community here in Toowoomba, which often is referred to the LGBTIA+ community. And on the 18th of May this year, we held an all-day community event known as the Rainbow Connections. This all-day event was open to the community, attracted approximately 150 people, but was filled with a lineup of speakers that nationally you just don't see all together in one location in Australia, regardless of seeing them here in Toowoomba. For me, one of the key learnings was that the members of the rainbow community here in Toowoomba wish to feel more accepted. They wish for greater understanding, and most of all, they wish to feel safe. In Toowoomba, we need to show more compassion and understanding for the members of the rainbow community. They are often the fathers, the mothers, the uncles, the aunts. They are our young people. They are older people. They are part of our community. Often the word compassion is not one that's associated with the LGBTIA+ community. So as a society, we need to be doing more. Likewise, people suffering mental health and physical injuries also need compassion. Often showing compassion for people with mental health issues can be challenging for many in our community. Today in Australia's workforce and our workplace, 1 in every 5 of your employees today will be suffering some form of mental illness at the moment. And that can be that they're having a bad day, or that they can be having severe and persistent mental health issues. Over the past 10 years, fortunately, a greater focus has been placed nationally on helping to support people suffering severe and persistent mental health issues. So as a country, we can gain a greater understanding and in turn, to show increased compassion. I guess I'm close to the end of my presentation. I know I'm not going to go 30 minutes, but there's a couple other areas I just wanted to touch on. I guess one of the other things about compassion is not being judgmental. One of the things that we tend to do often is we tend to judge before we've actually fully understood the implications about what's happening for the individual at the moment. We jump to a conclusion. So we need to learn more about not being judgmental as we go forward. Hanif asked me to talk about some of the work that we do at Lifeline where we are displaying compassion. There are many instances, but I'll share one that happened yesterday out at Charleville. So do people know where Charleville is by any chance? I think everyone's born at Charleville. That's not true. Actually, most people are born at Cunnamulla. To be honest, you'd be surprised how many people are born at Cunnamulla. But we have an office at Charleville. I took a call from one of my staff there, and a young girl, 17, had been dropped off by the parents. There'd been a big fight at home, and they dropped her off at a service station 8 o'clock at night. No money, no clothes except what she was wearing. And she was there in the fetal position, sitting on the bench. So our staff went in, collected her, got her to a safe motel location, made sure she was fed, worked with her, found out some contacts that were in Roma, arranged for a bus, made sure that she was going to be collected at the other end, and got her safely transported. Now, what's important about that is that she's 17. Under Queensland Australian law, she is still a minor. She is not an adult. So in those cases, she could have also been reported to child safety. But because of the connections that we have, and because of the remoteness, we acted correctly, we kept her safe, we made sure she got there, and now, hopefully, that act of compassion will help build her life again as we go forward. At Lifeline, we get called to do many things. Homelessness is still a big issue in this community, as everyone knows. Sleeping rough is often the term you hear. Showing compassion, one of the things I'll share with you that we've learnt through our work with homelessness is that if someone comes in and they've been homeless for a number of days, that often we find them very hard to deal with, that like they do not wish to work with us. But if we put them in a motel, we give them 3 good nights sleep, we make sure that they've had proper meals, and we get back to work with them, do you know, they are much better to work with. They're much more open to suggestions of what we can do and how we can work with them. There's some of the learnings that we're doing at Lifeline. So in closing, and I'm happy to take questions, but in closing it's important I leave with you that in life sometimes it is the small things that we do for other people that to them is the most memorable art and the most memorable act of compassion that you can do, and that it stays with them for a lifetime. Thanks very much.
There was a fantastic speech. We might go through the crowd now and see if anybody has any questions they might like to ask for the next 5 or 10 minutes. Is anyone out here? Okay, here we are.
Heather Griffin.
Heather.
Yes, can I ask you, people involved in Lifeline on the phones and so on?
Yep.
How do they balance compassion for others with compassion for themselves? That self-care issue for people who work with Lifeline and with a number of other organisations must be huge.
Yeah, look, it's. I think I can answer that for you. Obviously, at Lifeline, our crisis call is on the crisis support workers, the CSWs as they refer to them in abbreviation. We have on-call support for them for debriefing almost straight away. So if they're taking a suicidal call, they're able to get debriefed within minutes of that taking place. So it's talk through the issue, because sometimes those calls, they can go on for 2 hours. They can be a very long call. So that support mechanism's incredibly important. I encourage, obviously, one of the things I think we've lacked in Australia, and we're starting to wake up to the fact, is the importance of mentoring of our young people and that external supervision for our professional people in Australia is really important, that you need to have someone external to what you're doing to provide briefing for you, so you get a different perspective about what's happening. So that's really important. If we don't debrief them, then they can go away and they can actually have basically recurring memories of what's taken place, and so we make sure that on-call referral is there 24/7.
Steve Smith.
Steve.
Thanks, Derek. on basic human needs, food, clothing, shelter, follows along the principle that people don't care how much you know till first they know how much you care, and then you show them how much you care by giving them what they need first. That's what I'm hearing you say about you can help them in other ways to sort out their life. But if the immediate need really is, hey, I can't eat, I can't sleep, I can't deal with the basics of life, then you've got to go there first, yeah?
Yeah, we sometimes in Lifeline we talk about the heartbeat line. Do you know, everyone's seen the heartbeat line on the TV shows? Heartbeat? Often when they come to us, Steve, they're down here, the heartbeats drop down here. Our role is to pick it up and get them back to the heartbeat line. So we do that through, firstly, and again, it is that listening. It is that listening to what's going on for them. There's often the stories there, or stories, plural, that need to be told. And that we deal with that, and then we can move forward. For some people that come in for emergency relief, it's a quick fix, can I say? Some people, it's, I need food for my family, I need it now, and we'll come back and talk to you later. So it does move around a bit, but to get systemic change and in their life is about really drilling down to what's the issues and then looking at what are the support mechanisms we can do for them. And sometimes that can take 10 to 20 years. I think the days of people thinking, you know, you can fund a program for 3 months or 6 months or 12 months and we can make life all good. We can improve the quality of life, but systemic change for the family can take 10 to 20 years. It's generational. Yes?
Can I ask a question, then hand it on?
Sure.
Hi, Derek, it's Judith. How are you? Derek, within society, I know that there are still perceptions about homelessness to do with a judgment that people who are homeless are there from their own choices or from their own moral failings. So would you mind just summarising what you have found to be the common causes and demographics of homelessness in Toowoomba?
Look, probably the number, and no one has, Judith, an absolute fixed number. The number floats around 500 people. Now, when you talk about homeless, obviously, if you're couch surfing, that can come into that category of homelessness as well. But if you talk Clearly Park down here, for instance, there are about 76 people alone that in many cases are families. So you've got mum, dad and the children that are living homeless at the moment in that area, that will come and wash their clothes there once a week, will come and get fed on a Monday and a Wednesday morning. I guess one of the things, and to answer your question about is it their choice, I have to say I've come across people who have elected to live homeless, that's a fact, but I often find it's short term. It sounds like a good proposition and it's something they wanted to experience for whatever reason. Maybe they're being evicted, they're being blacklisted on the ticker list and they can't get housing, so they elect to go homeless. But after sleeping that for a period of time, the need and urgency to get into proper accommodation is really critical. There's also a desire that we go to them, not so much that they come to us, and that's one of the things we've got to do more of. Might sound strange, but they like us to come to their turf to understand better what it's like for them. The Toowoomba Housing Hub's had great success in the past 18 months, but we've still got a long way to go. There is still a number of people presenting. One lady the other day were able to provide housing, had been living in her car for 8 years here in Toowoomba. 8 years. And so what's happened is she's got chronic back injury now because she hasn't been able to lie straight for that period of time. So we've been working with that. One Aboriginal gentleman, I was taking him up to his unit at Ipswich Street here in Toowoomba, a one-bedroom unit, and he started crying. And I said, "What's the problem, Jeff?" And he said, "I've not felt safe, Derek, for 2 years. Not felt safe." So when you're homeless, feeling safe is really important, and a lot of them are not feeling safe. But we've got a long way to go. And of course, you don't want to generate you don't want to assist to being homeless either by saying, well, we'll do this and we'll do that. It is about, again, systemic change, about saying you don't have to be homeless. And I have to pay a compliment to a number of the real estate agents. They have worked really well with us trying to get people into long-term accommodation here, but demand is still outstripping supply. Demand for accommodation. Is that helpful, Judith?
I had understood that one of the growing demographics is middle-aged women who want relationships.
Yeah.
Previously had careers or being housewives and so forth and end up with nothing and living in car, as you say.
Certainly through domestic violence at the moment, there's a lot of demand coming through with middle-aged women who have fled domestic violence, living in shelters. We have one set of units here in town. It's a duplex. We've got two families in there at the moment. We normally put them there for about 12 months. It's about regenerating, rebuilding their lives. They do pay a nominal rent, but it's about getting them ready to get back into normal life again. But they must work with an external agency to us so that they've got support. So it's still about ongoing education and support. But I can also say, if I can move to the phone line for assistance, some stats to share with you. Sadly, about 68% of all men that we're seeing at the moment that are self-harming in Australia are male at the moment. And the call rate for ladies is the highest call rate. Between 55 and 75 is the highest number of callers from ladies that we're taking on that call line at the moment. Going to texting, young people, we expect to take 452,000 texts in the next 12 months. And 47% of young people said they would not pick up the phone line. They would rather communicate by text than talk over a telephone. Really interesting stats between the ages that I'll share with you.
My question is, I'm wondering why is it we're all into about not help create, we're only looking at solving like Band-Aid solution, never really solving the problem, because if you solve the problem, there would be no more problems. We're always looking at Band-Aid solution. We never really want to solve the problem. Why is that? We don't want to look really at the problem. They're all Band-Aid solutions. That's all I ever say. They're not really wanting to solve the problem, because that's what all governments are about. Not solving anything, just Band-Aid solution. Sorry about that.
Great question, mate.
Band-Aid solutions. So, I guess, can I say that I'm going to answer it this way for you from my perspective. And again, this as CEO of Lifeline, being in the industry 32 years, you can imagine I've seen lots of different scenarios. I guess for some people, giving them a Band-Aid solution is what they're looking for at that point of time. They're not looking to address the longer term issues. They have as I said in my presentation, it is that crisis or anxiety point at that point of time that they've come to us for. We've had some clients that we've worked with at Lifeline for maybe 2.5 years in counselling sessions. That's quite long if you look at it, but what I've learnt in this industry is, I mentioned earlier, that if you want to affect long-term change, you've got to have programs that are funded long-term. You've got to have 10 to 20-year programs so that the children coming up in those families learn the intergenerational changes that need to happen. Otherwise, you will end up with people who have lived on unemployment benefits generation after generation after generation because they've not learnt any different. So from the government, sir, I think one of the problems is we turn our governments over too quickly. So you have a change of policy each time it comes through. I think we waste far too much money on useless things sometimes in regards to not looking about what policies and procedures were in place that were working, and rather support them than then put in a new policy and change them. Taisu.
I think it is official, or at least semi-official, that Toowoomba is expecting a large number of refugees. Do you know the council or state government or even Lifeline have some plan availability for housing accommodations for these people when they arrive?
I don't know the figures that are expected to come in, Taisu. As you know, Toowoomba nationally is recognised as one of the main settlement areas in Australia at the moment, has for a number of years now. I would suspect that there is a lot of building still going on in Toowoomba at the moment. When I, at the last state elections, when I actually, local government elections, when I raised this question, I was told it's a state government responsibility, to be totally honest, and not a local government responsibility. But these are people living in our community that need accommodation. I don't have a clear answer for you, Taisu, to be honest. I can say, though, is that there is accommodation out there at the moment, but the numbers are reducing, and as more people move in, our population numbers in this town are about 107,000 people at the moment. In our catchment area, about 165,000 people. Highfields is one of the highest growing areas in Queensland at an annual growth rate of 7.5%. The council is looking at, I can tell you I've been in meetings of what Toowoomba looks like 2030, 2050 at the moment. So there is some forward planning taking place, but I can't give you exact numbers, I'm sorry. Yes, please.
Yes, I was just wondering, we were talking about the older women that are homeless.
Yes.
The numbers of older women who cannot find safe and affordable accommodation is growing exponentially, and the problem is talked about, but it doesn't seem to be getting addressed. So a lot of these women are living in cars, caravans in someone's backyard, sleeping on the couch. They've given so much, in return asking for somewhere to be safe that they can afford, seems to be falling on deaf ears. And I'm wondering, what are we doing to address the affordability and safety issues for this particular demographic, which is one of the fastest growing ones?
It's a good question. Look, obviously we work at Lifeline close with Department of Housing at the moment. They are proactive. I'm not going to say they're not. They are very proactive to work with. Having suitable social housing for them that is also safe is really important. Keeping the anonymity of locations where those ladies are housed is another challenge, as you're well aware, and certainly for us. Most of the members here today wouldn't have even known that we have 2 safety units here in town because we don't publicise it. The agencies know about it that we work with. Look, to be honest, it's a state government. It is for our local members as well. So it's the David Janetskis, it's actually the Trevor Watts to have increased dialogue about how do they lobby to have more social housing built that's safe. It is being built, but whether it's specific for ladies fleeing family and domestic violence, and I find at Lifeline it comes in waves, can I say? I'll have 5 ladies hit me, and they're not just from Toowoomba, they've moved up from Inglewood, they've moved up from, moved down from North Queensland, they've come in from the southwest. Sometimes, we've had to move them to WA to keep them safe as well. It's what you do to keep them safe. So I'm sorry, but that's where I'd think I'd be lobbying at the moment.
But as you were saying too,
Well, that's Lifeline. I'm not saying that's the other agencies.
how many do we need and how many do we have? There's a huge variance there.
I'd hate to say how long's a piece of string for you, right? That would be remiss of me. But look, it's something that there's no silver bullet. There is not. But there is the fact that you can advocate for that accommodation to be built. And the duplex works well because you're not causing a cluster situation. And they're in the community, and most people don't even know they're there. And that's how you need it to be.
Any more questions? Like you last, I think.
Really, this isn't a question. It's really just an observation, and it's really putting it back on us, Derek. I think what you have shared and what you do and what Lifeline does is commendable. It's really inspiring, and it's wonderful that you're here to share because we've learned a lot. What I want to say is that I come across people who've been traumatised as little people, and then things just continue to go bad for them. hypersensitive, because they've been traumatised, they've been abused, and then it just keeps perpetuating their life. I listen to stories, as you do, of people who just have one bad thing happen after the other, and I'm grateful that our community has those long-term programs, for the generation after generation after generation, that's what needs to happen. But, and yes, there are Band-Aid solutions, and yes, there is more need for housing, and yes, the need is great. But the onus is on every single one of us, certainly, Derek, isn't it? To make the most of every single opportunity, to not be judgmental, to kind of go the extra mile, and I think that's the challenge that we all pick up, from hearing you speak to us today.
I think you can do it. Each of you can do it in the most simple way. My younger sister retired last night after 44 years of teaching, and I went down to Brisbane, and they spoke about how she went the extra mile. She bought the hat for the student who didn't have the hat. She bought the togs for the student who couldn't go to swimming. Small things for her, small outlays. Impact, big outlays, big impact for the young one. Last couple of things I want to say, and I will finish up because I am over time, and I apologise to the next group. Can I say that it's also important to celebrate the successes too of compassion? Do not forget to do that. As small as they can be sometimes, there are lots of things to celebrate, and I'll share one quick story. A gentleman who I knew went to school with my youngest son, ended up in prison, came from a bit of a dysfunctional family, did some time in prison, came and saw me. And one of the things that happened when he came out of prison is he lost his identification. He didn't have a driver's license. His mother didn't know where the birth certificate was. He couldn't get work because he actually couldn't prove who he actually was. And that will resonate in this room, I'm sure. So what we did, because I knew this young man, we actually got him down to main roads, and I was able to sign some documentation, and we got him a driver's license, and we paid for the driver's license. Today, he's married, he's got 2 children, he's got a career, he's back on track, and the turning point was the driver's license. We celebrate the small things. Thanks very much.
Yeah, what an amazing guy. He's you can see how much he helps with community from all walks of life. He's a very, very compassionate man. And Derek Tuffield, he definitely deserves to be on the Order of Australia. So I'd like to put your hands together once again for Derek Tuffield. So next up we have our third plenary for the order of events over the 2 days. It's a plenary sharing experiences from 3 amazing people from around Australia and around the world. It will be hosted today by Cam Athwell, and Cam Athwell is a Sikh lady who has been living in Australia for some 20 years. She's an advocate for the Sikh community and a representative of the Sikh community at state and federal level and as when required. Cam is a member of the Police Ethnic Advisory Group in Brisbane and also a member of the Toowoomba Interfaith Working Group. So without ado, I'd like to welcome these people to stage. Wonderful.
Thank you, Lincoln, for that introduction. I wasn't expecting that, so yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. As you've heard, I am Cam Athwell, and I'm from the Sikh community. I'm a member of the Toowoomba Interfaith Working Group, and I have been for a few years now, and I enjoy every minute of it. Unfortunately, these last few months, I have been kind of a silent member because I've found a job again. So my apologies to the members that I can't be here with them to help like I used to, but in the background, I'm still beavering away, doing what I can. So this morning, we've got the third plenary, and we've got 3 wonderful people here who are going to talk to us and share some of their experiences of compassion, as Derek just has, about what Lifeline does. And it's amazing. I mean, I know about Lifeline, but hearing him, he's told me a lot more about what Lifeline and their volunteers and their members do. So we're going to have 3 other people who are going to share this and celebrating. Yes, we should celebrate good things. Unfortunately, the world is made up of bad news. You turn the TV on, we hear bad news. You go out, you see bad things. You look at the newspapers, it's bad things. But I think we should start sharing some of those good things that people do around the world. And there's plenty of these good people who are out there doing some wonderful things. So without me rabbiting on, as I do when I get started, I'll introduce Terry first. Terry Ayling is Facilitator of Compassionate Gold Coast and a member of the Australian Compassion Council of the Global Charter for Compassion, with lead responsibility for the Compassionate Cities Initiative within the ACC Vision of Australia, a continent for compassion. For the last 5 years, Terry has served as the volunteer spiritual care coordinator of both Gold Coast Health Spiritual Care Service and Hopewell Hospice Services. He is a champion for compassion in healthcare with a specific interest in compassion at the end of life. He is a credentialed interprofessional spiritual care education curriculum trainer and compassion integrity training facilitator. Thank you very much. Please come to the stage then.
Thank you, Cam. So the Australian Compassion Council, which is part of the Global Charter for Compassion, has the aspiration that in 2021 Australia would be recognised as a continent for compassion. My role on the Australian Compassion Council is as the lead of the Compassionate Cities Initiative. And as Marilyn Turkovich presented yesterday, the Global Charter for Compassion is now 10 years old. 2 million people globally have signed it, around 4,500 partners and 440 cities have signed the Charter for Compassion and began the movement to become more compassionate cities. At the end of my presentation, you'll see the website, but you can search charterforcompassion.org. And individuals and organisations as well as cities can sign the Charter for Compassion. For us, we want that signature to mean something, so hopefully this will give some examples today of the way that a signature and a commitment can make a difference. One of the things that I think is really important whenever we're talking about compassion is a really clear understanding about what compassion is. Compassion is not sympathy. Compassion is not empathy. And this definition by Paul Gilbert, who's developed a whole therapeutic technique around compassion-focused therapy, is for me one of the best definitions of what compassion is. Compassion is the courage to descend into the reality of the human experience. Compassion is the courage to enter into the reality of the human experience. Sympathy, if you like, engages our heads. I'm sorry that your father died. Empathy engages our heads and our hearts. I'm sorry that your father died, and I have some sense of what that must feel like. But compassion engages our heads, our hearts, and our hands. And there's something that I want to do about it. And I think whenever we're talking about compassion, we need to be absolutely clear what we're talking about. Because we use the word in all sorts of ways. Sometimes we're talking about a kindness, which is an expression. But kindness and compassion are not the same things. We tend to be kind to people like us. We can be kind to people that aren't suffering. But compassion has to do with our awareness of suffering and our desire to do something about it. And that takes courage. It takes courage to enter into the reality of the human experience. It costs us something. But it's focused on the other person. It's not focused on us. And later we'll hear how important it is to hold together compassion with wisdom. Compassion without wisdom is foolhardy. We might have thought as a society that it made sense to take black children away from their parents and put them into white homes. But it wasn't wise. So we need compassion and wisdom. Karen Armstrong, the crafter of this movement, and the consultative work that she did with 180,000 people at the beginning of crafting the Charter for Compassion, said a compassionate city is an uncomfortable city. So where are the uncomfortable hurting places in our city, and how do we respond with compassion and wisdom? Hugh Mackay, an Australian social researcher, has written a book, Australia Reimagined, recently released. And he talks about moving towards a more compassionate and less anxious society. And he says that Australian society can be characterised by two things currently. We have never been more socially fragmented, and we have never been more anxious. And they are two sides of the one coin. We have a deficit of compassion. And if there is a looming public health issue, it is the issue of loneliness. And we need to understand those hurting places in our communities and respond to them. So the Australian Compassion Council has this aspiration that in 2021 Australia would be recognised as a continent for compassion. We want to engage people in that process. We want to give them resources so that they can be wise in their expressions of compassion. We want to reach people that are hurting so that we know that we care. And we want to inspire the best of compassion in people. So a continent of compassion is a continent where all Australians are motivated by compassion to take responsibility to care for each other, where they have the resources to take that compassionate action, where they treat others the same way as they wish to be treated themselves. And we recognise in that the way that we care for the environment and the context in which we operate is really, really important. There are a whole range of compassion initiatives, so many happening in this city and right across the globe. Last night I went down to the heart of Toowoomba looking for somewhere to eat, and in your community credit union, which was closed, it was open. And it was open because the young people from Youth with a Mission had an experiential art exhibition to help people understand the problem of human trafficking. When I sat down to have a meal at the Junk Asian Street restaurant, there was a sign on the window of the number of disaster kits had been donated and prepared by the people of Toowoomba in response. There are compassionate things happening all across the city, and as Derek said, and all across the nation and all across the globe. We need to identify those, we need to celebrate them, and we need to invite other people to participate in them. We want to engage all Australians, and to do that, our Compassionate Cities initiative, which is my responsibility, is one of the key strategies. We want to support people to join the Charter for Compassion and to become a part of this global movement with their compassion action initiatives. And we want to launch a national day of compassion to bring the spotlight onto compassion. Actually, Australia was the first and currently the only nation in the world that has signed the Charter for Compassion. In 2009, our Prime Minister then, Kevin Rudd, the same one that gave the apology to our First People, as part of a bipartisan agreement, agreed to sign the Charter for Compassion. Now, sadly, nothing much happened with that. And some of our cities and some of our partner organisations are just like that. It's a helpful moment. But if it doesn't mean something and cost something, if it's not something that we're committed to, then perhaps best not to sign. We want to resource Australians around what compassion is and how to be wise in terms of their expression of compassion. So compassionate action, as I said, has two dimensions to it. Compassion is how do we notice and engage with the signals of distress around us? And wisdom is the wise and resourced action we take to address that distress. Compassion and wisdom. We have a range of compassion training modules available through our global website, and compassion integrity training is one of those things. A lot of online courses that are available at very little or no cost, all accessible through the website. And we have developed here in Australia on the My Digital Health platform free compassion training for anybody. It's available free of charge. We know from research that compassion is something that is innate in us. It exists. It arises naturally within us. But there are things that can happen that can block our expressions of compassion. And as we notice them in ourselves or in each other or in our organisations or institutions, we can do stuff that can remove those blockages and allow compassion to flow as it would naturally do. And because culture change, as Derek and others said, takes a long time, we want to start with education of our young people. And two of the programs that we are partnering here in Australia, the first is Think Equal, which works with young children in preschools, helping them to develop social and emotional intelligence. And then we've partnered with the Dalai Lama in his legacy program with many other organisations. It's called the C Learning Program, Social, Emotional and Ethical Learning. And it's a free K-12 curriculum that is available globally to schools free of charge. So we want to reach all Australians, and we want to inspire them. And one of the ways that we can inspire Australians is through music and art and culture. So Lior, a well-known Australian singer-songwriter, Nigel Westlake, a composer, and the Sydney Symphony Orchestra have crafted a compassion symphony. We're in the process of working with the Bangarra Dance Company and the Australian Ballet and the Louisville Dance Company to compose a compassion ballet, so that as we lead up to the 21st of September 2021, there'll be a whole lot of ways for people to engage and to experience and to express compassion that's happening for us. So very specifically on the Gold Coast, in 2017, the City of Gold Coast signed the Charter for Compassion and become part of that network of an international network of compassionate cities. They appointed Councillor Glenn Tozer as the city's Global Compassion and Kindness Ambassador. The city was also acknowledged in that year as the world's first kindness city. So on the 13th of November each year, we celebrate the World Kindness Day. And this small insert picture here is the awards festival we had on that day when the women of the Beachmont Country Women's Association were acknowledged with the Ambassadors Award for the 6,000 meals that they donated to firefighters and support crews during the September and the November fires. Because this conference is very much focused on the interfaith contribution that we make, we need to acknowledge that on the Gold Coast, the movement that started our Compassionate Cities initiative happened in our interfaith communities. And it happened primarily with our multi-faith advisory and action group. And Brian Gilmore is here, and he was the founder of that organisation. And that group was a catalyst for the work of Compassionate Gold Coast. They seeded that work by working with young people and asking them what a compassionate city would look like. and what a compassionate community would look like, and wisely they invited the mayor to come along and hear those ideas of young people. And he was so convinced that this was something worthwhile that he invited me to come and to present to the council, and as a result they made a unanimous decision to sign the Charter for Compassion. So interfaith and spirituality sector within our city's movement can be a catalyst for a citywide work. Within the Charter for Compassion, a compassionate city is a multi-sectorial work. It's not a religious movement as such. It's not a health movement. It's not an education movement. These 12 sectors represent the different parts of our city and the way in which, if we're going to be a truly compassionate city in the long term, that we need to animate people and organisations in each of those sectors to do compassionate work. Because compassion is about identifying the hurting places in our society and responding to it, through our work, these are the 6 hurting places in our community that make our city uncomfortable and for which we need to respond. Domestic and family violence. As we know, 1 woman every week in Australia is killed by a partner. And one of our police stations on the Gold Coast has 70 new reports of domestic and family violence every day. Homelessness is a problem on the Gold Coast, like it is here in Toowoomba and throughout the city. But actually, I think the bigger problem is what I call I refer to that as homelessness, people that don't have a home. But I think the biggest, that's houselessness. But the bigger problem is people that have houses but don't feel at home in them. We have a big problem with addictive behaviour, of course, on the Gold Coast. You might be surprised that our biggest problem with addictive behaviour on the Gold Coast is steroid use. Mental health issues, of course. It's at epidemic proportions, and social inclusion and cohesion. Our work in the interfaith sector continues vigorously, and just last week at the Australian International Islamic College, the Compassionate Gold Coast group, together with the MAG group, run our first ever Interfaith Harmony Music Festival, which included dances from the World Kindness Dance, a call to worship by the Imam, and lots of other inputs from people. It was a tremendous celebration honouring our Indigenous people and celebrating our faith together. It's the first step in our desire to have a citywide sacred music festival. Our work in the education sector, both with young people in primary schools and high schools and with universities, has been important to us. And my work over the last 5 years in particular has been in healthcare and end of life. So if any of these dimensions of this work are important, please let us know. I guess what I want to say is what is most important is that any sector within a community or any group can initiate a compassionate cities work. But it's not a mono-sectorial work, it's a multi-sectorial work. And it may be that in your city, you could initiate from your interfaith group a compassionate cities movement, but we need to engage the other sectors. Our aspiration is for Australia as a continent for compassion. Individuals, organisations and cities can be a part of that movement, and this is how you can do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. It's always wonderful to hear Terry. I met Terry a few years ago through one of the events at Pure Land Learning. I've met most of the people down there. And I've watched him talk about compassion, and he does that with a passion himself. And he's involved in a lot of the work, and it's always good to hear you talk about the more and interesting work that you're doing on the Gold Coast and elsewhere as well. So thank you for that. Next we got Ronit. Ronit is an educator, teacher, life coach, journalist, author, and a justice of peace. She specializes in social and emotional intelligence and diagnostic teaching and is a master NLP practitioner with over 33 years of experience in teaching, co-teaching, presenting, mentoring, managing teams, directing programs, and people with diverse cultural backgrounds to promote social, emotional intelligence, and academic excellence. Ronit has 33 years of experience in teaching, developing educational methodologies and tools and programs, coaching, writing in promotional relationship with focus on education, social, emotional intelligence, health and well-being, diversity and leadership. Geez, I'm tired just reading that. How do you do it all? Anyway. She's an author as well of 5 books. She has been writing for 35 years, and educational writing has appeared in educational magazines around the world. I've known Ronit for a few years, and I got to know her through Together for Humanity. She is the state director for the Together for Humanity Foundation, and I've seen her work with young children in schools. And at this stage, I would like to invite Ronit to the stage. Thank you.
I would like to start with the acknowledgement. And the reason in Together for Humanity we do it is because we discovered that kids don't know why we're doing it. For most kids around Australia, this is totally tokenistic things. They don't really understand why we're doing it, and just putting it out there that we have a lot to learn from people who lived here for a long time, and we hope that we will be able to teach them why we're doing it, so they'll know exactly why. I want to introduce you to the Together for Humanity work, but before that, first I would like to apologize for all those people who've seen part of that presentation, and for all those who do not know me. I'm going to ask you to participate now, and maybe write down in your small booklet, where do you think I came from? So just give yourself a minute and write down to yourself, where do you think I came from? And after you do that, please guess my religion. Yes, yes. Anyone would like to shout out loud if you don't know me? If you do know me, please do not share. Yes.
I asked you this morning where you're from, and you said it was a secret to this afternoon.
Yeah.
Yes.
So would you like to guess?
Okay, don't shoot me. Mexico.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Anyone else?
And I think you've got a good religion, whatever it is.
Thank you. Thank you. I definitely do have a good religion, but yeah. Anyone? Guess? Lady at the back, yes, please. Peru? Yeah. Yeah. A religion? Okay. I'll take that. Yep. Now, we'll get back to it. I promise I will tell you later on. So I promise you will not leave without me telling you. So I want to tell you a little bit about Together for Humanity. September 11th happened. There was a lot of hatred towards Muslims, and a rabbi from Sydney decided that he's going to go to schools with a priest and an imam to show children that we have a lot of things in common. And basically it's an interfaith, started as an Abrahamic faith, and that was really, really insightful to go to schools and figure out what kids are actually thinking. Now, what they did is they believed in modeling good relationships. And this is how the program started. It was called originally the Goodness and Kindness Program, and it has evolved to be Together for Humanity over the years. Now, what we're doing is we go to schools. We're educators. We believe in education, and we go to schools. And many times before we go to schools, we give kids a survey to fill out. Now, I hope you're sitting tight, because I'm going to share with you a little bit of what kids think. It's actually, not an easy thing to show you. So, Australian kids, what do they think? Okay? We ask questions about who is friendly. That's what they think. We ask them about caring. We were talking about compassion, caring. This is what they think. Together for Humanity has been working in the past with children from grade 3, grade 12, and in the last year we've decided to go earlier because we believe we need to do it earlier. This is what they think about morals. It's actually a snapshot of what they believe. Now there is a slide that I did not put in there. We had a debate whether we should or not should it put it out there. But did you know that Asians sell drugs? So grade 4, kids wrote down that Asians sell drugs. And the question is like, you're in grade 4. You're not supposed to know anything about that. But they still wrote it down, which is a worry. Look about being scary. Now, do you understand that if children think that?
What kind of children?
Yes, across. Yes. It was shocking for us. It was shocking for us. We even, and I want you to know that we did a presentation at Ethnic Community Council. It was a summit, and we were presenting, and one of the ladies, she said, "Can I please come to the stage? I would like to say something." And we said, "Oh, sure, come in." And she said that Australia did the same research with 16,000 university students around Australia. And he said it looked exactly the same. Exactly the same. So we were on that space of the younger ones, and she basically says, no, it goes all the way. Now think of it that way. Children think the way they think. It is our job to make sure they won't think that. We don't blame them for thinking that way. We just help them develop new beliefs about other people, because if they carry those beliefs into their daily life, then you understand why we need a lot of compassion, why we need Lifeline to do so much work, why we need so many organizations sorting out that thing. Even Muslim kids, they think that we do have a problem. Now, I want to go, I actually want to share with you a little bit of the statistics. And there's a lot of things about what we've discovered over the many years that we're doing Together for Humanity, but if there's one thing that I would like you to take from today, is actually the item that talks about knowledge. We went to schools that children knew a lot about Islam, they knew a lot about Jewish people, they knew a lot about Indigenous people. They still had those beliefs about them. Now, this was very hard for us to accept, that learning about, it's not enough. It just doesn't do that. Now, for everyone who's an educator, that's actually devastating. It's like, oh, so what are you doing? Well, no, we're not there to give them knowledge. Knowledge is not going to fix the problem that we have. So if you take one thing from it, and we've seen thousands of kids across Australia, no, they do not need to know about the history of the Indigenous people to change their attitude towards them. It's just not enough. Now, if you go and look at the iceberg, you understand why it's not enough. It's a surface thing. We're doing festivals. Yeah, they're great. They're great. They just don't change attitude. They're great. Celebrating what everyone brings into this thing, it's wonderful. It just doesn't change attitude. If you want to change attitude, you need to go deep. And if Terry says we need to feel uncomfortable, then it's exactly this. It's uncomfortable to go deep. We need to go deep. So remember that many things that we do are on the surface. We need courage to go deep. Now, another thing that I want to share with you is, there's a lot of things that I'm sure many of you who are doing education believe exactly similar to the things that we discovered here. We want you to know that regional places had greater problems. And we want you to know that something that worked really, really well for us is the relationship we had between us. Now, a guy who's not here, or who is my colleague for many, many years, his name is Imam Abu Ghazali. He was at the first photo over there. And Ahmed and I, we've been going all around Australia to do a lot of presentations. And Ahmed and I were very, very good friends. And all we need to do is to be together on stage. Do you know why? Because that will solve a little bit of your problems regarding my religion. I'm actually Jewish in my religion. Do you know that the kids do exactly the same thing? They just say yes when they do it correctly. Look, my name is a giveaway, and when we go to children, we actually don't give them our names. So, which makes it a bit harder. So Ahmed and I, we're both a fantastic team. Why? Because Ahmed is an imam. I'm a secular Jew. Ahmed is a male, I'm a female. Ahmed is Palestinian in his heritage, and I'm Israeli. And all we need to do is model it. Why? And I think we talked about it in our groups. It doesn't matter much what we say. What matters is what we feel, what we think. Kids know. You can't cheat that. You can't lie. Relationship. Kids know that we really, really have a lot of appreciation for each other. Ahmed and I have the same faith. We do. Like, every time we talk, we know that we have the same faith. We just worship in a different way. And that's exactly what we want kids to think. We want to model it. It's not a blah, blah, blah. It's we're walk the talk, not talk about it. So, I want to talk a little bit about principles that we follow, and it did come out the whole time throughout the conference yesterday and today. We do believe in the golden rule. It is everyone's faith in here. Everyone that sits here. This is his or her faith. We do believe in it, and it's something very, very important for us. Now, we are educators, and we try to state most of the things that we would like to do in a very positive way. So we do talk about, like, do we need to be non-judgmental? No! We need to be respectful. We need to focus on what we want rather than what we're running away from. We need to focus on telling kids this is where we're going rather than looking backwards and saying, you know, those are the bad things that we did in the past. So this is our focus. We want to focus on those things. So the first thing, and it was mentioned yesterday, is that we need to work on us. In order for me to be compassionate, I need to understand what is compassion. And you've heard that I come from the emotional intelligence side, and we do believe that it all starts from within. So we need to be compassionate to self and so on. So that looks like a cliche. I just want you to know that most kids don't even know who they are. They just don't know it because they think they are what other people think of them, which is a big work that we need to do in there. The other things that's very, very important for us is that we believe in a holistic approach to doing this work. In the past, it was us working with children. It was like every person, please raise your hand if you're an educator in the room. Okay. Well, basically all of you are. Even those who did not raise their hands. You know exactly that you can do amazing stuff with children. You have to keep working at it. It needs to be sustainable. It's not enough to do this once-off wonderful thing and then go home. And I think Derek said about this long-term thing, and we do follow this thing that we need to do a community work, not children only. It doesn't work when it's just a singular thing. The things that I talked before is modeling, and being genuine about it. Those are the other things that we're doing. I'm going to just go over it, so I will not go over my time. Oh my God, I did go over my time. So this is a belief that we have that's very, very important. We need to bring families into that whole equation. You know, in some faith communities, family is the foundation of everything, and we need to remember that. So we bring families into this thing. We do work on collecting resources to give teachers, which is something very, very important for us, doing this thing. We believe that peace it's something that we need to teach. It's not something that they get from the air. Like, seriously, what they get from the air is not, it's very polluted. Seriously, very polluted. Especially now in this tablets and screen era, it's not filtered. I mean, you'd expect kids to filter it, but hey, adults don't filter it, so it's very hard to expect them. We do believe in leadership. We do believe that we need them to lead the way, so we do focus on leadership and compassion. We do believe that in action, obviously, it does matter and very, very important for us. And as I said before, we need to start early. Now, I want to finish what we're doing with the model that we follow. As an educator, I believe that this quote is what keeps me going. It keeps me going in everything that I do. Just stretching the mind, it will never, never, never go back to its original dimension. One's mind, once stretched by a new idea, will never, never go back to the original dimension. And children, that's all we need to do. We need to stretch their mind. And another thing that I would like you to take today is that it actually doesn't take long to do it. We found a way of changing what kids think in an hour and a half. An hour and a half. Now you're probably asking yourself like, oh, seriously? How serious it is? And this is where I would like to share with you, with my 1 minute, I hope I have, the models that we follow. We found a way of uprooting weeds of hatred, of fear, of discrimination, of all the things that we would like to take out of our society. We found good ways of doing it. We found good ways of planting seeds of greatness in children. And by the way, so easy to do that. Do you know why? Because kids want to believe you. They want to think that the world is wonderful and safe and that they are gorgeous and amazing and have power to change whatever happens around them. They want to. It's almost like they just stand there and say, please tell me that it is okay. Please tell me that I can do something, that I do have power. So we just tell them. But we need the communities in the ground to water them. Because we need to think sustainability. We need to think long term. We need to make sure that those children will go home, change of mind, change the home environment, and then Derek will not have a job. Hopefully. So, thank you for everyone for coming today. I want to thank Hanif Melin, the whole Pure Land, for inviting us in here. And my blessing to all of you. May the force be with you.
Thank you, Ronit. Now you can see what a strong presenter Ronit is. Like I said before, I have seen her in action. She has the children memorized. But at the same time, they're relaxed enough to take part in the activities that she runs. And one of those activities that I took part in, which was many years ago, she actually made me stand in a box. And the kids had to then guess what religion I was. Where did I come from? You know, did I have 3 eyes or did I still have 2 eyes like the rest of them did? It was really, really interesting. Thank you, Ronit. Thank you for sharing all that with us. Our next presenter, just as strong, we got Dr. Michael Cuthill. He has led a professional research chair in community development, was director of a highly successful community research centre at the University of Queensland, and was coordinator of social policy and research at Gold Coast City Council. He has been recognised both in Australia and internationally for his evidence-based and collaborative approach to addressing community challenges and aspirations. Michael is now working as a private consultant for major public, private and community sector organisations. He also works in voluntary capacity with Pure Land Learning College, supporting the Toowoomba Peace and Harmony Initiative. I got to know Michael again through Pure Land Learning College, and I've seen him do a lot of work with Pure Land Learning College. So, Michael, please.
Give a woman a fish and you feed her for a day. Teach a woman to fish and she can feed herself for a lifetime. This is the basic tenet of community capacity building. My name's Michael Cuthill, and I've had the pleasure to work for 3 days earlier this week with the group whose photo is up here and some on the stage here with me. We had a 3-day strategic retreat, 9 till 5, then another 2 to 3 hours in the evening. So it was pretty full on. We were looking at the basic principle of how we can support and enhance the capacity of the many and diverse local people who are working to build peace and harmony in their communities. This work we've been undertaking for 7 or 8 years at the Multi-Faith Multicultural Centre with Mr. Hanif and Miss Mei Ling. And this is work that's been at conferences, workshops and in projects for quite a long period of time. So the latest iteration of what we're doing. The objectives of the workshop were to bring together diverse participants. We had, I think, 7 countries, 5 religions, and people with no religion, males and females. So we wanted to bring those people together with diverse skills, experiences and views to look at getting enough information to start us being able to develop guidelines for community capacity building for peace and harmony. That was our first objective. The second objective was to establish an evidence base. So yes, I'm a researcher, but the evidence base is how we make informed decisions and how we look at what we know and can move forward. So we wanted to establish an evidence base for ongoing planning and development to support peaceful and harmonious communities. 3 of the group here are going to give you a 5-minute snapshot of their reflections of the retreat. So none of us know what the others are going to present, but we hope that provides a basis, a quick snapshot, so that people have some questions that they can ask in the following session. So first of all, we have Norbert Steinhaus. I've known Norbert for, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 years now. Norbert has 30 years experience working with communities in Germany, Europe and in Asia, Asia Pacific. This is with the Bonn Science Shop. So we're not going to go into a lot of detail about that today, but these are science shops across the world, and Norbert is also the global coordinator of the international science shops. So Norbert's going to give us a 5-minute overview of what his impressions of the retreat are, and if you could please welcome him.
Yes, I have to lift it up a bit. So thank you very much, Michael. And if you're interested in Science Shop, I'm around here all day, so we can talk about this model a bit later on. I have to thank you, Michael, and the Pure Land team for inviting me to this conference. It's a very amazing experience here. And I have to thank you, Ronit, for your presentation, a very powerful presentation, and you brought up all the key words we've been talking about in our 3 days retreat. It was about diving below the surface. It was about role models, the holistic approach to transform communities. It was about connecting partners, about leadership, and about action. And what you told us about teaching children or working with children, I think this is what we all do, we who came together, what we do with communities. So with the elder people in this. So we came together in this retreat because we all share a vision. We share the vision that the voice of people, the voice of communities is important for our work. It's mission critical. And we took time to dive below the surface. We had 3 days. We had the time for discussion. We talked about different issues related to our work. We talked about power, and Basil gave us a good overview about the different elements or the different sources of power. Power means ability to move people from legitimate power to expert power, but also about the power to ask questions, strategic questions. We talked about language, the different language of cultures, the language of context, and the different language of communities. It needs translation between the different partners within communities, between different stakeholders. My background is research. I try to connect communities' requests to research resources. I have to translate a lay question into a language a researcher can understand. It's not just the other way around, to transfer or to translate research results into something that people can understand. We've been talking about transparency and openness, and we've been talking about trust. So one of the basic questions we were talking about, and what we try to explore, and what definitely needs more time to explore, what does it mean to be a community leader? And how do we make community organizations lead the agendas? I think these are basic questions for our work in the future. How to do that? How to make their roles, their problems, their requests, how to make it visible, intentionally visible, so that they become aware of their voice. We think it needs training. It needs training of communities, training of all partners within these multi-stakeholder, multi-actor groups that should come together, using a variety of methodologies. It needs empowerment of communities and compassion as an act of empowerment of communities. So the only thing what I can bring to you as an audience in this context, working with communities, not working with individuals, but thinking of the communities, the strength communities can have if they work together. So be courageous. Be courageous to ask questions, to question those who are on the stage, who might work with you. Connect with each other, connect with different groups, not just with your own group. Observe what is going on, exchange your experiences, and learn, and dive deeper below the surface. Thank you.
Back down. Thanks very much, Norbert. To save time, I'm not going to go into deep descriptions of each of our speakers. You all met Fakande yesterday from Scotland. So if you could come up and please welcome her.
Thank you very much. I think Norbert has said it all, so I can easily sit down. So I kind of want to just talk about why I was excited of actually coming here when Hanif told me this is happening and an invitation for this. So as I understood that this would be a kind of a time to take a step back from doing, because that's what we do, isn't it? We just do all the time. And to really be able to reflect upon aspects of our practice, also listen to our stories and our relationships, because at the heart of what we're trying to do is about community capacity building. So this is what I understood that we would come together and do, work around this. And I think also, when you're out there doing, you get very tired. And I think I came really tired, because sometimes it's battles that you're kind of, you don't win those battles, but you're out there just confronting all of that. So the space, I think, to some degree, it confirmed for many of us that what we already knew, but maybe from another perspective. So listening to each other's stories, we were able to also add to what we knew, or actually to confirm, yeah, this is the way it is. And I would also say, with a strong bunch of people like we are, I think for Michael at some points, facilitating the process would have been tough, because we just wanted to say what we needed to say. We didn't want to actually look at the time. So I think personally for me, what I'm going to take back from this, apart from the fact that we will be working together on this for much longer than the 3 days that we were here, is that the possibility to increase your networks. So I now know people here that I didn't know before. The possibility of sharing skills and knowledge, but also the possibility of collaboration. And I think that that's going to be quite a strong possibility. The outcome is unknown. but actually I kind of probably thrive in that, because sometimes it's getting, stepping into the unknown is what you need to do. And just finally, which is not about this, and I just felt it's a moment to link with the heart, that in terms of, I'm an educator, and actually whatever you've said is absolutely right. And I work with older people, meaning everyone in this room. And I just wanted to, there are people in this room that have been in spaces that I have created. And I came back after 2 years and, spoke to some of them here, in Brisbane, in the Gold Coast. And in fact, Terry has also been in one of my spaces, which I actually say, this is not going to be a comfortable space. I'm going to take you into your discomfort, because that's where you're going to do your learning. And I think that is so much needed, that kind of space for people. So whilst it's about communities, but my work is also about individual transformation. Because when individuals transform themselves to the level that it's like, what can I do? Then if you have more people that are, what can I do? Then that community can really work together. Thank you.
Thanks very much. A successful group process for me is when you get past the stage of all being nice to each other and you're actually starting to air your disagreements. And we did manage to get to that stage. Now, you all met Basil yesterday too. Basil's from Singapore, so he's going to give the final snapshot for today. So please welcome Basil.
Together we come from different parts of the world with rich experiences. That was the first line from your multi-faith prayer earlier, and I think it's a good snapshot, actually, of this 3-day retreat which we had. This retreat/workshop was really a 3-day intensive immersion into a small makeshift community of practitioners from either interfaith dialogue or community building. The methodology provided by Michael and Pure Land's Multi-Faith Multicultural Center turned us into a microcosm of human society. People arrived from all over the world. They came from various professions, different cultural backgrounds, age groups, and most of all, an accumulated wealth of community work in different, very, very different contexts. We shared our personal stories and motivations, case studies, and projects we are currently working on. The privilege of having a group sharing from such disparate fields offered me insights, parallels, and best practices that I can bring home to my own interfaith practice in Singapore. Personally, I do interfaith work concerned with tweaking, just tiny tweaks in the processes of dialogue, especially dialogue around diversity, because sometimes it's the minor changes that can have the deepest impact. So I shared a new project that I'm working on, developing a tool to foster deep conversations around all sorts of diversity, interfaith, interracial, intercultural, age groups, neurodiversity, physical differences and handicaps. A tool that can enable conversations for people who are not diversity experts themselves, people who are not trained dialogue facilitators, but yet a tool that can fruitfully and safely create these conversations for people, especially safely. So now, in presenting that to the group as a case study and listening to their contributions, my tiny little project now contains improvements, now contains tweaks from interfaith challenges in Wales that Owen provided, training mindsets in Scotland, partnership brokering in places like East Timor, community engagement from here in Toowoomba, and science shop applications by Norbert from Germany. I go home enriched. I return home in a few days' time with not merely having made new friends or merely expanding my network, but I go home more informed about the possibilities, the potential that interfaith work doesn't have to be just interfaith. It can be disabilities work, it can be interracial, it can connect with refugee work, it can connect with the police force, which I learned so powerfully here in Toowoomba. That in this work I'm already doing back home in Singapore, I could actually add value to the various communities in my home country. This is my reflection from what Michael and Multi-Faith, Multicultural Center here has helped us do.
So I hope the richness of those presentations gives you a little idea about what we were indeed privileged to share over the 3 days earlier this week. Owen has come up to support the team. He said, I think 3 or 4 of you speaking is enough. So he's going to support us in the question period. Briefly to wind up, we are taking the results from this work and trying to make sense of it in terms of producing some guidelines. So we're hoping to do that over the next 6 to 8 months. And Miss Mei Ling will be helping me here through Pure Land, and we've set up electronic groups for the overseas visitors so we can all share as the work progresses, edit, refine, argue some more over the media. So that's where we're going with this. So thank you very much for allowing us to give you a snapshot of what we did earlier in the week.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you to the group here for sharing your learnings over the last few days and also sharing it between yourselves as a group. I would like to say at this stage that I'm really sorry I wasn't here yesterday, because just the morning I've learned so much and I've heard so much of what's happening. When I first started doing multi-faith work, it was all talk. You know, we should do this, we should do that, you know, maybe we could try this. But listening to everyone today is telling me people are not just talking, they're actually doing things. So that's a big plus, I think, for all of us here today. And I would like to ask someone else to come up to the stage today. We're very fortunate to have Dr. Ravi Bhatia from India, who's joined us for this conference, and I would like him to come up to the stage and maybe share a few of his thoughts with us.
Hello everyone, Namaste as we say in Hindi. It's a pleasure for me to have come here to this beautiful place. It's a very quiet place. I feel very happy. I feel there is a serenity around here. There's a feeling of, community life here, etc. And I feel very happy here to have come here. I have come to Australia a few times earlier, but never to this beautiful place called Toowoomba. Since we are talking of compassion and examples of compassion, I'll give you a small example which happened to me when I was a 6 or 7-year-old boy in Delhi. I come from Delhi, India. Actually, my father and mother, my parents, that is, we used to live in Lahore, which is now in Pakistan. And at that time when I was born, it was part of India. Anyway, it was a traumatic experience coming from Lahore to the part that remained in India, across the border, etc. I won't go into that. But my mother and my father both were teachers. My mother was a school teacher, my father was a college teacher. And so education was in our blood, if I may say so. After a few years, maybe when I was 6 or 7 years old, my mother moved to Delhi, a place called Karol Bagh, a place called Gol Market. Gol Market, which is which was near several schools there, etc. It was near another place a very beautiful temple which we call Birla Mandir. It's a very beautiful temple, not only a temple, there's a playground, etc., etc. My mother, since she was a teacher, she wanted me to go to a good school. And there was a walking distance school called St. Columba's School, which was run by Irish Christian missionaries. Irish Christian missionaries. Some of the good things that the British did for India was to provide good schooling, good education, higher education, good healthcare, etc. My mother took me to this school, St. Columba School, when I was about 6 or 7 years old. I did not know a word of English at that time. We spoke Hindi at home. And the father, a tall gentleman I was, who was wearing his, robes, he asked me something in English. Since I didn't know a word of the English, I didn't understand what he was saying. So I just kept quiet, but he showed understanding and, what I may say, compassion to me. He wrote something in mathematics, plus sign and division sign, multiplication sign, and he gave that piece of paper to me. Since I understood the multiplication sign and the division sign, etc., I answered those small questions which he had put me, and I answered them correctly. And he said to my mother, we select your boy, he is a very intelligent boy, and we take him to this school. So I got very good education in that school, and I learned English, and if I may say so, I learned it quite well. So I think whatever I am today, one of the main factors is that I received good education, school education, at that place called St. Columba School. It still exists there, and there's a very beautiful cathedral outside. It was only for boys. There was another school for girls separately. So anyway, I wanted to share this small but very significant piece of compassion, example of compassion that I received when I was a 6 or 7 year old boy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bhatia. I think what we have in common is, yes, I'm from India too. And I also was taught by nuns from Italy when I was very, very young. And yes, education is a big, important thing. And I've had that diversity in my life, most of my life. And I think that's played a big role in where I am today and what I have become today. I just want to, before we start the question and answer session, which we got about 25 minutes to do, I'm just going to ask everyone on the stage which parts of the world they've come from, because I think Pure Land Learning has done a fantastic job in this conference by involving people from different backgrounds, professionally as well, learning from other people's experiences. And like I said, we're actually doing things and learning from people with what they've actually done, not just talked about. And bringing people from all over the world. I mean, the world is a village now. It's not the world anymore. We can travel, within days to get anywhere. To bring them all together here today, I think is commendable to Pure Land Learning for doing that and for allowing us to share the knowledge and experiences of other people. So I'm going to start from this end and just ask which part of the world they come from.
So apologies to the people in the front. In my own language, the country is called Cymru, which means the land of the compatriots. And I was saying it has a better meaning in Welsh than it does in English, which is Wales, which means land of the foreigners. So it's a bit odd to have a country refer to themselves as the foreigners, but there you go. But in our native language, it's Cymru, land of the compatriots.
Well, since Owen went into the etymology, I'm from Singapore, from the old Malay word Singapura, which has connections to the Sanskrit as well, which basically translates to Lion City. So Singapore.
I'm from Scotland, and I'm not going to go into any of what you did. So I'm from the best city in Scotland, which is Glasgow, and wherever I travel, I definitely bring shortbread, because shortbread, really, the Scottish shortbread is to die for.
So I'm from Germany, from the city of Bonn, which previously was capital when Germany was divided into two countries. So as you all might know, the government has moved to Berlin, the new and old capital of Germany. And maybe you all have a certain relation to Bonn. I think you all are aware of Haribo, which is an abbreviation for the producer, Hans Riegel, H-R-I, and Bo stands for Bonn.
Thank you for that.
My experience is only in Australia. I was born in Adelaide, spent most of my adult life in Sydney, had 10 years in the Whitsundays, which is probably the most interesting contribution that I have to make, and now I live on the Gold Coast.
I was born in Israel, and for those who wonder, both my mom and dad are from Iran.
I'm local, so I started pretty close to here, down in Brisbane, worked my way around Australia and ended up back here.
Well, as I just mentioned, I live in India. I was born in India. At that time, Lahore was part of India. I'm traveled to most parts of the world, and as I said, I have also been to Australia 2 times earlier, to New Zealand, USA, England, etc. Anyway, it's very nice to be here and to be, to meet new friends and and to keep our acquaintance alive. I think we will be using modern technology of email and internet, etc. Thank you.
Thank you for that, for providing your backgrounds and everything. And it's interesting to see that we've got Europe covered, more or less. Asia covered too. Australia covered. America is missing. American. We've got an American here, of course. Yeah.
It's missing since Donald Trump got elected.
Good one. So we got America here too. Africa. Guess what? I was born in Kenya, East Africa. So look, the whole world is together here in this hall, and we're sharing our experiences, our life experiences. That's where our learning happens. Like you all said, you got to be in it, to dig deep down in it, to actually understand and then work with it. So without carrying on, I shall now open the floor for any questions that you have for our presenters here this morning.
I enjoyed the sharing from the 3-day working group. May we understand the objective, what the group is focusing on, please?
Can I just ask you to introduce yourself, please, before you ask the question? Thank you.
My name is Ray Browley.
Thank you. And is that question directed at any particular person or anyone?
Yes, anyone who wanted to ask it who was present at the 3-day conference this week, please.
I can just read out the objectives for the retreat. Two main objectives, even though there was a lot of other reasons, but we wanted to bring together diverse participants to lay the foundations for developing guidelines to community capacity building for peace and harmony, with an acknowledgement that other resources might also emerge from our discussions. The second objective was to establish an evidence base for ongoing planning and program development to support peaceful and harmonious communities.
I am Steve Smith.
born and bred that way and probably die that way. I have a comment and a question. The comment first is we've heard a little bit about not to judge over the last couple of days. May I offer, if we suspend judgment and become curious, then we move past both non-judgment and judgment. Your thoughts on that to any of the group?
I think you've hit it on the nail, really. That is my principle, is about being curious, which is why the unknown is not about being afraid, it's about being curious, definitely.
May I just add, I think any kind of community engagement starts with listening, and the basis for listening is curiosity. That's part of the diving deeper into the issue, to understand the problem behind the question. Yeah, so this is the starting point for any kind of engagement.
Hello.
And I also believe when someone's speaking to you doesn't sense that feeling of judgment coming from you, this person is more open to being vulnerable. This person will end up sharing more, and you'll end up finding out and listening to a much deeper part from this person, which could develop your relationship a bit better or solve the issues you are working with. So I think it doesn't even have to be a full suspension of judgment, just a slight reduction in our levels of judgment can enable someone to just be so much more vulnerable with us.
I'll just say that one of the principles that I live by is that I never want to learn about another person or group of people from what my own people tell me about them. So I don't want to learn about Christians from what my co-Muslim religionists have to say about Christians. I will ask a Christian what they believe and so on, and I think that's the sort of principle I have generally, because at least you get an authentic voice when that person is representing themselves, not hearing second or third hand information.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Princess. I'd like to ask one of you to share, or one or two of you to please share a personal experience where you showed compassion to someone who was abusing you for your religion or for your choice that you were making at the time. How did you reframe your own perception about that person, and instead of reacting, you practiced compassion and responded in a manner which was actually transformative to the person who was being abusive? So you saw a change, you saw the light. If you could please share.
I can actually share something where I was actually the abuser in my own thoughts. And it's basically the story of how I started working in this space. When I was 16, Israel and Egypt signed a peace contract. And I was chosen to be one of the first kids to participate in a youth delegation with the first exchange students to Egypt. My brave parents allowed me to go in that group, and one day the Egyptian kids came to Israel, and we were staying in the same place together, and in the evening we have decided to go to the Egyptian kids' rooms. So we kind of knocked on their door and said, hey, can we come in and stuff, and they welcomed us, and we just sat there and watched them. And we were shocked because they did the exact same things that we did. And we looked at them, and it was a moment where I actually realized that I had beliefs and thoughts about them that never questioned. And they were enemies, you know. I grew up thinking that they are enemies. And then we had an opportunity to go and spend time in their families. And we were shocked again, because all we met is people that wanted their kids to go to school and be happy. And they were not enemies. They were moms and dads. And in my head, I kind of developed this slogan that says, Egyptian kids have moms too. And so it was transforming for me, because I realized that in my thoughts, I was thinking bad things about them. They haven't done anything to me. And so I was actually, in my own thoughts, were treating them in a bad way. So I'm actually very grateful for that moment. So thank you.
I'll be brave. I'm Helen, and although it's not to the panel, I've only just got the nerve to get up and stand up and say it, so you'll have to bear with me. But you were saying about women and people who haven't got a room, and there's shortage of accommodation in Toowoomba. I have share accommodation, so there's 150 people in the room, and so you probably 80 of you have a spare bedroom, 40 of you won't want to do it, so we've got 40 spare bedrooms. And if you want to register them with Derek, you could do it short term, 1 night, 7 days, 1 month, 1 year. You could take whoever you feel comfortable with, whether it's a woman that you were saying between 55 to 70 or a young person, and you could dip your toe in or jump in. Just an idea. Thank you.
I'm sorry that I stumbled over the words, but before I was talking about the difference between houselessness and homelessness. I think that's a terrific example of what compassion looks like, that there are lots of people that don't have houses to live in, and lots of people that have houses to live in but are lonely in their houses. And if we think together, as this woman has done, that is a rich resource, and we can actually broker some of those connections with wisdom. And I think, as passionate as we need to be about the issues of houselessness, we also need to pay attention to the issue of homelessness. One of the fastest growing sectors in our census is sole occupancy homes. And we know that loneliness is a significant issue. And if we can address 2 of those hurting places in our community through a creative solution like that, I think that's a great expression of compassion.
I just wanted to share with you a story which I think this morning I shared with someone, I don't remember who it was. In Scotland, the director of Interfaith Scotland is a Baha'i woman, and so Maureen, she invited me to go and I don't know what topic it was, to a group of Baha'i women. And so afterwards, she phoned me up and she said, Farkanda, I was just so shocked, and said, what's happened? And she says that once you had left, that actually a few of the Baha'i women who are from Iran, when they saw me, and I don't usually wear it like this, I have like a hijab that's kind of just my face bit. She said when they saw you, they were frightened. And so why is that? Because in Iran, in the country they come from, women like me, who wear like this, could be an oppressor. So this is the other thing about judgment, which is very important, is that actually sometimes you make a judgment because it's coming from your oppression. So it took some time for them to actually then converse with me, but it was positive because now they are in, they're in conversation with someone who they can also begin to change that experience as well. And I think it's very important that when we talk about judgment, you know, sometimes it's coming from all the words you've heard before. And now you have someone in front of you who looks like that and can potentially be like that, or will make you feel unsafe. For women, you see someone coming, a male coming, it's very dark, you will cross the road if you have that kind of experience. So I think that element we need to also kind of recognise in judgment.
I think that judgment is a defense mechanism. We need to have judgment. We must be able to judge what is right, what is wrong. We have to have judgment. I think what we don't need is to be judgmental. And I think distinguishing between judgment and judgmental is very important. And it's about confidence, I think, and being able to respect the space that the other person is in. It's like we're all in this journey. Everyone started from a different place. Everyone is in a different place. It is okay. We just need to respect that they are where they are, and all we need is to be in it together. So we just have a conversation. We just be there together, and we'll be able to help everyone go one step forward, 2 steps, wherever they are with the skills that they have. It's okay. We just need to respect that. So judgment, judgmental, yeah.
I'm in the corner here, Nora. Hi, Cam. Nora Amos. I've been involved in the interfaith space for probably over 18 years now. And what I notice that's lacking is really the inclusion of Aboriginal spirituality. And I can see that, you know, the pull-up banner there on that. But the fact of the matter is, if you look around the room, there's actually an absence of Aboriginal spiritual elders in the room. And I guess for me, having been involved in that space for so long, and also talking about compassion, I know we want to look forward, but I think that unless we actually look back, I think until Australia can reconcile its treatment of our Indigenous brothers and sisters, that we can't move forward as a compassionate nation. So how do we rectify that? How do we get serious in ensuring the inclusion of our Indigenous brothers and sisters and their spirituality has a place at our multi-faith table?
I think that was a very important comment that you made over there. And in defense of Pure Land Learning and the organizers of this conference, the Indigenous community was invited there. Unfortunately, for some reason, they were unable to attend. But a very good point. Yes, we need to involve them if Australia is going to move forward. Thank you.
Perhaps I can address that. The Australian Compassion Council is absolutely committed, Nora, to the engagement with our First People. We have Indigenous advisors on our group, and we're working with Jim Bowler and the Unity Earth people around the repatriation of Mungo man and Mungo women, and around that symbolic action, because with our global networks, the First People of Australia are esteemed amongst other First People because of their longevity. In terms of what's happening on the Gold Coast, to give expression to that, our Interfaith Harmony Music Festival started with a really strong commitment to our First People, with a welcome to country and an ochring of the women present, which was the decision of the Indigenous elders. And we ended that event with a drumming ceremony which was aimed at giving expression to all of the different faith traditions, which once again started with the Didge, but finished with the heartbeat to represent our our heartbeat. And in our work in the hospital, we dismantled the Christian chapel and the Muslim prayer room and called it a sacred space for which the Indigenous elders came. And the spirituality of that space and all of the artwork for that space, there are no other icons in that space other than Indigenous spirituality. So I can assure you that we're doing our best, but there's a long, long way to go.
One of the first rules of engagement is that you can't force someone to engage. We all face that challenge with the groups that we're trying to get them to work together, and a lot of the discussion we had was about creating a shared vision. So as we all have that challenge, I'd suggest that we can change the question of why Indigenous people are not here to what do we need to do to successfully engage with Indigenous people around these issues. So it's a little bit different, but it's a challenge, and it's a challenge anybody who's trying to bring people together. We just need to confront it honestly and say, well, maybe this is not the appropriate venue where Indigenous people are not happy to be, are not happy to speak, not happy to come to. Maybe it's not a comfortable setting. So what do we need to do differently to make it happen?
I would like to say a little bit about the indigenous peoples of India. India is a multi-faith, very diverse country, many languages, all the religions are there, people from all religions are there, they live together, basically harmoniously. There is occasionally some conflict, but not too much. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the indigenous peoples whom we call Adivasis in India. There are, I think, almost 8 or 10% of our population belongs to what is called the indigenous peoples, the Adivasis. They have been living for generations, for centuries in communities. They have been living together harmoniously, without conflict, sharing and caring for each other. Not only that, some of the medicinal, they have, of course, the trees, the jungles have been a source of livelihood for them and sustenance for them. They have some, they know a little bit of properties of trees, medicinal properties of trees, other than the wood and the fruit that trees can offer. And and not only that, in today's world, there's so much climate change, there's so much pollution, etc., air pollution, water pollution. We learn a little bit, or quite a bit, from how these indigenous peoples have been living in harmony, without damaging the environment, without damaging the jungles, the forests that they are living. So, and also learning a little bit about the indigenous forms of medicine that they are able to find from the trees. So we can learn a lot from the Adivasis of India, which I thought I'll share with this audience. Thank you.
Fantastic. I think we're on to our last question for the session before lunch. So take it away.
Okay, sorry. I would like to come back to our main theme, which is compassion. I've heard speakers say that at the end of the day we need to be judgmental or anything. This is my view. I'm not disagreeing with you, but to me, as long as you need help, I will help you. I don't care what color you are, what kind of hair you have, or where you come from, because that is compassion. I've traveled around the world, as I spoke yesterday, and I've helped many people. And when you go around the world, you are helping people because they need help, and you have that power to make that difference. But as soon as I form an opinion that I don't want to help the Muslims, because if I were to look at the Sikh history, the Muslims have killed my gurus, I would have stopped helping human beings. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't care who you are. I will step forward and I will offer you my help because I think I can. If I start to look beyond your past, then I think all of us will not be compassionate at all. opinion is good, but if you become opinionated, that becomes a problem for all of us. I don't think all of us are here because we think that you have a history, you have a baggage, and I need to look at your baggage or your history before I offer my help. Help must come from the heart, that's what I say. It is never from here, but it's from here. Because as long as you start from here, you will make a difference. Because we start with difference to one human being. If I help you, I am very sure that you will help forward because somebody has helped you. So we need to, yes, we can do detailed research about what our biasness are, but that is very difficult. I think 2 years ago or 3 years ago when I came here, I told you what happens to the Sikh people in Singapore. There is this stupid thing that goes on where they pull the ear and they ask what color is your turban. They basically mock my religion. How many of them can I fight? What is the best solution to solve when these people do this to you? You invite them. Come to the temple. I show you what Sikhism is all about. And believe me, there have been many people who have come forward, even to your church, to your mosque for that matter. When they come, they will calm down, they will be defenseless, and they will appreciate who you are. And then they will stop making fun of you. That is the first step. Because the minute I start to confront, I will start a war, a small war between myself and the next person. And it's not going to end. Because you know why? I'm going to hate you and you are going to hate me. And your hatred is going to multiply. Hatred multiply faster than love. And that is very dangerous. That is why we have wars. We use religions to fight wars. There is no such thing as my religion is better than you. I had a lawyer who was 40 plus. Would you believe he asked me this question? I shared this, I think, with my learned brother down there. The first question he asked me, Satwan, is your God powerful? Is your God better? You know, when you start on the premise, is your God better? God is God. How can God be better? How can your God be better than mine? At the end of the day, this is God. He says, my God died for me. I said, okay, good for you. But I don't think I can even answer that question, whether my God died for me. But at the end of the day, as Sikhs, we believe God, one God. And I think God permeates everywhere. Except that you call him Allah, you call him Bhagwan, or you call him Ram, or you call him Allah. Be that as it may, but this is what I think we call different names. But other than that, don't be judgmental when you come and help. Help comes from here. We are all the same. Except you're born in different color. I wear a turban, you don't wear a turban. I've traveled during my all my disaster relief work. Some of them have actually come and touched my beard. Is this real? What is it made of? And then I went to China to help. They started pulling my hair from my hand because they don't have hair, right? Chinese people, sorry. But they pull. I allow them pull whatever you want. They are thinking, I'm from another planet, But you just keep quiet and then let them do what they want to do and then sit down there, explain to them, and that's how I win over people. Because you have a conversation with them. It is difficult at that point of time for you not to be judgmental and confront, but if you can overcome that first hurdle of, hey, shut up. The minute you start that, right, you are not going to like the person. Let the person talk, whatever you want to talk. Talking is free, right? And then you say, okay, let me explain my view. Slowly but surely, you will win the battle. It is a small step, but it's a long way to go. That is all I have to say. Sorry, I'm long-winded. My apologies.
Thank you. Thank you so much, for sharing your thoughts with us. We're coming spot on 12 o'clock, and we're going to finish. And I'm going to finish with something that I hope you can all take home with you. Talking about compassion. One of our spiritual masters, we've got 10 gurus. One of them, and I can't remember which one, but said that when you're going to do a good thing, don't hesitate. Do it. If you're going to do something that's not good, is immoral, then hesitate. Keep on hesitating. Don't do it. Thank you very much for everyone for listening and the panel for being here and presenting. Thank you again.